Hello everybody, thanks for coming to my talk today. I'm well aware there's many streams of good talks on, so I really appreciate the people who've turned up. They've been fantastic so far. Hopefully you feel that way in 28 minutes time. I just want to thank all the organisers actually for today. I work with one or two and I see how hard they've worked to do this. And it's pretty phenomenal actually. And I just want to thank everybody who helped me along the way here. For a few times I was standing in a room talking really loudly to myself. Most people couldn't tell the difference, but some people knew I was practicing for this. So, and yeah, if you have any questions, please ask me at the end. So just a little bit who I am. My name's Cowan. I'm the Director of Engineering at ShopKeep in Belfast. I've previously worked in another few software firms around Belfast and Lisburn. And if you ever want to reach out, please get me on Twitter or GitHub at Cowan. So just a little to set the scene with what this talk is about. It sounds like a very grand title, to transform engineering cultures, but I want to tell you where we were coming from. As a leader, I think it's the most rewarding part of my job to be a leader. I realise it's a privilege. You get to really define what people do during their day. Lots of people are doing the things that you get to decide. And we are pivotal in helping create cultures. The changes that you might make are not always welcome or desired. And that makes change tough, and there's various reasons, and I'll get into that later. But this is a little bit about our story at ShopKeep. A few years ago, my peers and I decided to make some big changes. We're better for it, we're continuing to transform, but there were issues at times and things I want to tell you about. And then finally, a really good thing to always check is, how do you know if the change is worth it? How do you know if the journey is taking you in the right place? And hopefully through this, you'll get some ideas and inspiration if you want to do similar things where you work. So what does culture mean? We've always known the word culture. I mean, it can be any group of people, any country, any society, a sporting organisation, a town, a family. Culture's everywhere. But there are things that I think underpin a culture. It's ideas, beliefs, values, and behaviours. And when you marry those things together, you end up with a culture. An engineering culture is exactly the same. It's, the things we talk about: ideas, beliefs, values, behaviours. They also create the culture in an engineering team. So does culture matter? I mean, is it not just our job to come in, write some software, ship it and go home? Does it really matter what you do along the way? But I would argue that's wrong. I would say culture affects everything. It affects how we develop that software, how we solve problems, how we deal with our customers, do we respect them, how we work together as a team. Basically every interaction that happens between two people, I think, will be underpinned by the culture. And there's some fantastic material out there. You'll see some of the biggest companies in the world, they have people, teams who are employed all day just to work out how to make things better, how to get people working better. And there's a book that I often reference, it's by Tom DeMarco, it's called Peopleware. Chapter 1 of that book, Tom will say that most times when a project doesn't work, it was social issues that stopped it. It wasn't technical. Most times you can do the technical thing, something else derailed it. So clearly culture is important. So for our story, I'd love to say that there's a simple recipe for culture. All you need to do is follow that it'll be obvious what you need to do and easy to make those changes. That when you make those changes, people will be happy and they'll support you. And within days, this will be fixed. Everybody will have an awesome culture. Every company will be amazing to work at. There'll be no problems. Everybody will be happy. With full disclosure, that's not entirely true. And the big reason, I think, is change. Change is a very difficult thing. I mean, not everybody enjoys it. I wouldn't enjoy everything in my life changing every single day. Change breeds uncertainty, and it can make people nervous, and it pushes them out of their comfort zone in a way that they don't always want. So just a little background on ShopKeep. I know some people might have heard of us. We make a point of sale system, which you might know as a cash register or a till. Most people in America, where our headquarters are, don't know what a till means. So we talk about point of sale or a POS. We have engineering offices in Belfast and New York, where our headquarters are. Most of our customers are in the USA, 90%. There are ShopKeep customers in Belfast, you may have seen them, but primarily we target North America. We had lots of leadership changes a few years ago. I joined the team late in 2016. Shortly after that, we took on a new CTO and a senior director, and that was early 2017 in New York. So that's a lot of change for everybody. But we decided as a group we wanted to create a great engineering culture. So when we got to ShopKeep, what did we find? So a good business with a large number of customers. We're still growing. A product which is independently regarded as good. Before I accepted the job at ShopKeep, I just read to see how are we viewed out there. And there's lots of surveys, there's lots of people making point of sales, and we are deemed a good, solid product with lots of features. Of course, we can get better, but we suit a lot of customers today. A very capable engineering team. I'd seen some of the ShopKeep team at meetups. I'd heard about them. I followed some on Twitter, and that's what I found I got there. And a good test automation culture. So that's awesome. But there were organizational smells. So for the next few slides, I just want to walk through what some of those smells are. You may recognize them, hopefully you don't, but there were things that stood out for us. So the first one was, there was friction between the developers and the product owners. And it was way more violent than this. And that can be common. But what you had were two very smart, engaged, enthusiastic sets of people who for some reason just couldn't get things to work. And that was tough. We had a team structure which probably wasn't really fit for purpose. I mean, a lot of these are subjective things, but when we were balancing up the needs of our business, what we had to do against the team structure, it just didn't feel like it worked. We had scope creep, so there's poor Sean Bean yet again. And then on the diagram on the right-hand side, it was something we started to show to the team early on, and I actually think it wound a few people up because, people were saying, I understand Agile, I understand Scrum, I understand iterations, but we had teams who were doing the top one where by the fourth iteration, a customer might have said, yeah, I've got something I can use now, but they were pretty unhappy along the way. That led to big bang releases that were problematic. And we were trying to say, let's do more like the bottom one. Yeah, you only do have a bike by iteration 3, but at least somebody can get from A to B. And we didn't really have a concept of fast fail. Some projects seem to take a long time, and at the end of it, there may have been some unhappiness. This was the one that probably felt the most difficult for me after having come from other businesses where there's always show and tells, demos at a pretty frequent cadence. When I joined ShopKeep, I just found I could never really get to see software. I was managing a number of team leads, and they were delivering software every sprint, but you didn't get to see it. The CTO almost never got to see it, especially in Belfast, and even the VP of product said, I rarely get to see software unless I explicitly go and ask a team to show me it. So there was no real event that happened at. We had an iOS release process, which meant that it at least took 2 months from the moment you had an idea until it got into the App Store. But if you got really unlucky and you had a bug somewhere along the way with a few different branching strategies and things like that, it could have taken up to 5 to 6 months to get the version you wanted in the App Store. So for a company to release mobile apps, that's not great. Developers were very frustrated at a mountain of technical debt with no real plan to ever get through it, and also a huge number of things in flight, which caused more distraction. We had hackathons. We call them code smashes at ShopKeep, but some people worked through these and delivered some great stuff, but there wasn't a lot of structure around it. They were low energy. The first one I had, a lot of people just didn't seem even happy that it was code smash time, and that structure didn't really deliver anything, not even fun. And then we had a QA and test culture, which again was very difficult for the individuals. We had a very fragile and reliable automated test suite, and we literally did over-the-wall QA. The app's ready, let's throw it at that guy. And we also had a number of contractors to help us over bumps and spikes in our work. Every company I've worked at, we have contractors. I think it's a good strategy for the times you get too busy. It's a way you can use some cash to alleviate that. But they weren't part of the team until they emerged the PR, and then they found it wasn't right. So at that point, I was like, this guy. It's not lost to me that I've got more like Homer Simpson as I get older as well, but I'll lean into that. But then I thought like this, look, we've identified these things, we just need to work through it. But I think it's also important to consider why were things like that, because there were great people at ShopKeep, and it's too easy to come up and just say, oh yeah, there's problems all over the place. You have to understand why. There had been a really turbulent period where a lot of senior executives had changed. We had a new CEO, CTO, VPs everywhere, and directors in engineering. And that is all turbulence for people. I've said we had engineering offices in Belfast, New York. Sometimes changes happen in one office, but not in the other. And it was almost like when one team possibly improved, because the other one wasn't in balance, we reverted back to the problematic state. The leadership in New York it's a long distance from here. You can't just drive over to the Belfast office, and all the hangouts in the world weren't fixing this. And also for those people in Belfast, it was very hard to influence change into the headquarters in New York. And many good people have tried to fix this already, like I've said already, and I don't want anyone to leave here thinking that people failed. It wasn't that. I think they possibly just didn't have the right support at the right time, the right way. So we started our journey. So what do you need? Like all journeys, you need a pack for it. I think you need a prioritised list of what needs to change. So you need resilience. There were bad days. There were days that I found very tough, but you just have to get through it and know you're doing the right thing. You need a supportive CEO, CTO, and peers. And I mean, I found our CEO very supportive during this. He spoke to me a few times and he said, "I think things could get worse before they get better, Kevin. I don't want you to paper over cracks. I want this company to run the way we think it should." And he knew. So what he was really gearing me for, there would be difficulties, but he was accepting of that as long as we were always moving in the right direction. You need strategies to help people through change adoption. I've said that earlier. It's difficult, and we'll talk more about it later. And a willingness to listen to your team. It's critically important that you do that. You have to accept that not everybody will embrace it, and you have to admit when you're wrong. And we made mistakes along the way here. But you also have to stick to the things that you really want to do. And I think that's just worth remembering, if anything. I had to get back to this sheet a few times. So what makes a great engineering culture? So we've talked about, we've seen some problems, we've identified what they are. We identified 6 areas we wanted to focus on: team structure, communication and transparency, personal development, engineering practices, leadership, and connecting with customers. And so for the next few slides, I'm going to talk about what we did in each area to try and improve those. So the first one was team structure. What we had essentially were horizontally aligned teams. There were teams that were groups of people of similar technology sat together. So there would have been JavaScript teams, back-end teams, QA teams, mobile teams. And at times what you had was this kind of waterfall thing where like a back-end API could be developed. That would then be passed on to a front-end team. So it would be fully developed, passed on to a front-end team. They would build the front end, and this could take months. And then you might find out after 3 or 4 months, actually this thing doesn't work. What we wanted to move to was vertically aligned full stack teams. So each team would have every single person they needed. You didn't have to borrow any engineers. You didn't have to go and beg your favorite iOS developer to do that little thing for you. You would have it if you needed. And also that each team owned a vertical slice of the business. And for example, we have a team that own merchant onboarding now. That is their job, and whatever they need to do to improve that, then they'll have the people to do it. We also wanted co-located teams. We had some teams were split across Belfast and New York, which can work. Sometimes that's an asset, but we were seeing that it was friction for us. So we hired Scrum Masters locally, we hired product owners locally, the engineers were in the team, we embedded our test engineers, and we really adopted Scrum. So that we felt that worked for us. We created what we called engineering happiness teams. So most engineers were working for product, which is again how companies work. You build products, you sell them. But also, product would never come along and say, "Hey, can I have a new API gateway, please? Hey, can you make sure authentication is better?" Because that just doesn't surface itself to customers. They don't say, "I think your CI isn't great." So we ring-fenced 2 teams to do that. One for our back-end microservice work and another one for our mobile teams. And we really embraced contractors. We made sure they were part of the team where they could install engineers. Okay? All right, cheers, thank you. Okay, so I was talking about, we created a thing called sprint reviews, where every team at the end of each sprint would show, they would talk about the goals of that sprint, how they achieved them, they would demo the software they built, and the CTO will be at that, all the product owners, the VP of product, our CEO can appear at them, I'll watch every single one of them. And we found that was a really good way to know every single sprint what was coming out of each team. And then we also have quarterly product reviews where each team will get an audience, a meeting with the CTO, VP of product, and we'll talk about the next 3 months, where we're going, and is it the right thing, and also have a look at how the last few months went as well. We started technology town halls. Our CTO, every 3 to 4 months, he'll address the whole technology team along with the VP of product and tell us what the state of the union is, how things are, where we're going. And we were trying to reiterate messages on these things, make sure that people really got what we were trying to do. We started the concept of newsletters. Everybody will write newsletters. They go up in the bathrooms, so you have something to read when you're there, and they're around the offices too. I've written some newsletters. They're a one-page document. They'll go up on the wall, and it can be just on some small piece of technology we use or process we're about to adopt or something like that. We had surveys, Culture Amp surveys, which are an international survey testing hundreds of thousands of people, but also Google Forms if you wanted to know how was the last engineering offsite. You can shoot out a small survey. And then offsites themselves, they were like a full one-day internal conference. We would have lightning talks, team building, and engineering-led discussion sessions. We would talk about what did we want to improve. And the last one's a kind of an internal joke. My CTO wanted we would have some good crack at it because American people didn't understand the concept of crack in the way we do. So that was it. So personal development. So I'm a firm believer that you need to be constantly developing yourself. Of course, like this dog, right? So, so of course you can lean into that yourself. But I believe employers owe the people some support to grow, and we split into 2 categories. There's technical growth. So we always send people on conferences, but we formalize that everybody has a $2,000 budget. And if you can spend that and go to 5 conferences, you'll get the days to go to 5 conferences. So that's just it's not even up for debate. Your team lead can approve that for you. We have internal skills. We run a 1-day Scrum course. It's a really fun event. You get to build Lego on that because we want, and it doesn't matter if you're a certified Scrum Master, you go through that course because we want to synchronize everybody on our version of Scrum and make sure we all understand the same thing. And then we had Ruby, iOS, Go, and JavaScript skills, and they were delivered by engineers for anyone. And then we also subscribed to online subscriptions of books and videos and things like that. The second area was to help people improve their professional presence by presenting at sprint reviews. Talking at our weekly tech talks. So again, they're delivered by engineers for other engineers, and actively encouraging people to speak at meetups and conferences, and then sponsoring those where we could as well. Engineering practices, 4th area. So I talked earlier about our iOS release process. We've reduced that down now from 6 months is the worst case, but best case 2 months to 2 weeks. Or 1 week when we need to. We got feedback from our customers that 2 weeks is probably enough to change their point of sale app. But this is a 60-minute presentation on its own, and some people have already delivered that. I spoke earlier about tech debt. So now everybody has a tech debt budget. We make sure every team gets 20% of their time. That's a day a week, and it's not bad, and we're seeing it pay off. And we check that to make sure the teams actually get that. Somehow it's not always we need to deliver product and we're stuck in tech debt. And then we created an architecture journey, which is a 24-month plan to fix all the tech that we want, like large-scale things, and also that's been broken up into 6-month segments. But that was brainstormed by engineers. There was no product input into that. PagerDuty was another thing. At times our pager has been noisy, and some of you probably have experienced that. And you know what it's like. You dread a noisy pager. About a year ago, we started a process where we analysed every single page that ever happened to make sure, if this is a noisy page and we have something jittery here, let's fix that. Or if it's a legitimate issue, let's fix that. And at one point last year, we went 20 days without a page, which was kind of unheard of, but very recently it's been down to like 2 or 3 pages a week, and that's good. We want 0. We revamped our hackathons, or we call them code smashes. And again, it was just to try and make them more fun and make it seem worthwhile. What we have now is a code smash with New York and Belfast kick off at exactly the same time and finish at the same time. We sleep at different points during those 2 days. But if you want to have a team that's working in New York and Belfast, it's an efficient way to get lots of stuff happening. And then we have a showdown on the Friday afternoon. And if you win your category, you win prizes. I'm wearing one of them right now. It's the t-shirt, not the shorts. And then a real focus on our test and automation. That test suite I talked about that was flaky and took a long time to run, it was on average 10 hours with a 40% pass rate, is now 90 minutes with 100%. Leadership, so being part of that team, we had to make sure we were doing our bit in this. We made sure we were accessible, we encouraged feedback, and we ramped up the frequency of skip level one-to-ones. What we wanted to do was make sure we were available and we were hearing what people had to say. We tried not to shirk hard problems. It is easy to hope something will get better. Maybe if we leave that, it'll get better. It never does. Go and find the hard problems. And we had to make sure we were role models in this. We had to demonstrate the changes and be, act the way we wanted other people to act. And again, we tried to sponsor things where we could. Maybe not always the traditional ones, but just to try and make, try and get our voice out there in the community as well. And the final area was connecting with customers. So like every business in the world needs its customers. And I think we had a team who were very empathetic to customers. We just wanted to raise that a little. And we created a program called ShopKeep Go. And at ShopKeep Go, the deal was if you go and spend money in a ShopKeep shop up to a certain limit, you'll be refunded. So you can go and have as many coffees, buns as you want, things like that. And the only deal was you had to observe one thing about the shop and just tell our VP a product, and you got your money refunded. And there were people who visited like 100 merchants in New York. It was harder in Belfast, but you could go unlimited times in Belfast to the merchants. And we also sent people between our offices, so just to experience that. There's budget dedicated for that. The Belfast people are usually more excited to get to New York than the opposite, but we do that. And when we're in New York, we get to go and see merchants as well. We invite engineers to customer research meetings. That's where we'll hear, like, customers will literally tell us what they want in the product. I've attended those. They're amazing. They're really good. It's like 30 minutes where they just download onto us. And then we read customer feedback during every single weekly engineering meeting. That's on a Friday afternoon. And we read good and bad. And that information is also available on a Slack channel. And once a year, every engineer gets to sit with customer care and see what's coming in on the phones, through the text, through the chats, to see how are our merchants. And again, I've heard things now that genuinely shock me. Just things that I wouldn't have perceived as difficulties actually are. So you need to bring people with you when you're doing all this. There's Office Space Guy, he's awesome at doing that. So the first bit is reducing the daily noise level. One thing we found was the email address that's used for developers was used to sign up to every single account that ShopKeep used. So you can imagine what your inbox looked like. Some monthly subscription coming in every 2 or 3 minutes. We fixed that. We removed any Slack channels and removed any meetings that just weren't needed. For tactical communication, we made sure that 15-minute weekly engineering meeting where Belfast and New York both attend, that we delivered information. We emailed it to reiterate. We would inform people of changes in small groups where necessary, and we always made sure we were available. And the deal with me is if you ask me for time, you will get time that day. I'll move whatever meetings I need to. And then strategic communication, long-term stuff. That'll be town halls. Our CTO sits down with groups of people every now and then. He visits Belfast like 4 or 5 times a year. And again, the newsletters, just to make sure we were constantly sending the messages we wanted. So the sad part about this is you will lose people. Natural attrition happens, and I have friends at ShopKeep who've gone on through things that they really want to do their whole life. I'm happy for them, but I'm also conscious, and I want to be honest, that this process meant we lost a few people. Sometimes people see the same problems that you see, but they can't wait any longer. They've already been banging their head against the wall for 2 years. You're probably the third person who's been saying, I promise this will be fixed in 6 months' time. And they're like, I need to go and do something else, and that's okay. Some people don't want to be part of the change, and some people they just can't see the good in the business anymore, so they leave. There's some people who don't see the same problems that you're trying to fix. They think you're working on the wrong thing, and you might even be dismantling a thing that they built. And then transition has a cost, and it's turbulent. Some people just find it unsettling, and they leave as well. So how do you know if you are successful? We have found the best way is talking to your team. Oh, there's Leslie Chow, yeah, awesome. One-to-ones, skip level one-to-ones where you get to talk to your manager's manager. And just informal chats. You get to know your team. Survey the team. Talked about that already. Make sure they're anonymous. People are much more comfortable when you're not harvesting email addresses. Measure output. And the measure of a software team is usable software, and we've seen that improve as well. Ask your internal customers, so people who you may not have been great relationships with or stakeholders. Ask them, and look at the general atmosphere. How are things? So was it worth it? Yes. Thankfully, after all that, it was worth it. Our surveys are showing that our team believe things have improved. We're producing more software than ever with quick turnaround cycles. There's a good relationship now between engineering and product owner. It's just not a thing. Like that angst that existed 2 years ago just isn't even spoken about now. At times, hackathons have led to really new roadmap ideas. And these are quotes. This is real life feedback. The demos are now a massive part of our culture. So think where we were 2 years ago. You couldn't see software unless you individually cornered someone and said, show me your software. You got to see it every week now. People say, I feel I'm listened to. And code smash rules. We're probably quite hard on ourselves here, but I've realised this is a journey that never ends. We still need to improve. So tech debt and architecture is a journey for us. We have created this internal thing. We call it a yellow brick road, and it's going to take us to Emerald City. There's a picture of it. So each post-it note there is a task we're working on. It also exists in Jira, just in case one of these things, just in case I carry that home with my foot's on it. But we like to have it up in the office. We have some artistic people, or at least more artistic than me, who drew this, and that's awesome. We need to look at recruitment and onboarding. We've spent a lot of time building good customer experience. I want to make sure the engineering experience is equivocal to that. And our incremental product delivery could always be better. We've made great strides. I'm very proud of what the team have done, but we want to make that better. We release hundreds of times a month. We could be faster, we could be shorter. So in summary, if you feel the things are not working, change them. This transformation never stops. You iterate on it like you do on everything else. Start with the biggest problems, the things, best bang for your buck. Don't procrastinate. It's an easy human thing to do. I will do it. I procrastinated creating these slides. Prioritize things, and remember you can't do it all at once. Be a friend to yourself. Measure as you go along. Make sure things are getting better. If they're not, fix it. There will be bad days. That's okay. You have to know when to stop doing something that's just not working, but know when to stay true to yourself as well. And it will be worth it. The Blues Brothers promise that, so it's true. That's the end of my talk. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?